Hey, this is Terry, the creator and host of this podcast. If you find the content here valuable, would you please do us a favor and go to Spotify, Apple, or any place else you get this podcast and subscribe to it and review us? It takes like a minute and it'll really help other people with depression find us and realize that they're not alone either. Hello and welcome to the Giving Voice to Depression podcast, brought to you by Recovery.com, the best place to find mental health and addiction treatment for anyone, anywhere.
Each week, we profile a guest who shares openly about their mental health journey. They share because they understand that when people don't talk about their depression or other mental health conditions, those of us who do struggle with them can feel like we're the only ones, that there's something wrong with us and that no one understands. We understand.
I'm Terry McGuire, the creator and co-host of this podcast. You have my promise that we'll keep it real here. Depression is real, and we're not going to sugarcoat our discussions about it.
Hope is also real, and you'll get a dose of that here too. I'm Carly McCullough, a licensed social worker and educator, and Terry's daughter. We've both experienced depression and also support loved ones struggling with it. We're here to normalize talking about depression and mental health in our communities, as well as our families.
And to share real-world tested strategies that have worked for other people who have walked similar paths. Thanks for joining us. While living with depression, as we all know, can be really hard, raising a family while we try to manage it adds another layer of struggle. And if our partners or children have their own mental health challenges and diagnoses and need our care, regardless of how we're feeling, well, that requires next-level planning, management, and support.
Today, our guest Michelle shares how she navigates this intense challenge, offering practical, hard-won insights on the ongoing management of her depression, anxiety, and ADHD, and how she strives to be an effective, empathetic parent while carrying such a heavy load. Here now is Michelle, giving her voice to depression.
As is true for many of us, Michelle's depression started years and years before it was ever named or diagnosed.
Looking back, it probably started when I was 17. My dad, who everybody loved and adored, he just walked out the door and never came back. And that was during a time when I was getting ready to go to college and start my own life and have this whole transformative process. And so it was all kind of compounded very quickly. And I think when I got to college, I think that I thought going out with all your friends and drinking or smoking weed or doing any of that stuff is all normal college stuff. But I think for me, I enjoyed it more because it was a way to escape those feelings. I just didn't know that I was having those feelings, really. I was really hard to push down any feelings of being sad or upset or, just constantly trying to get some kind of gratification.
When you're depressed, what do you feel? What do you think? How is it in your body?
It's funny because I always describe it as a roller coaster because I can have several days, maybe even several weeks where everything just coasts along, feels good. But when I'm depressed, it's like this heavy feeling. I feel like my limbs are heavy. I feel like I can't stand up and move. I have no energy. And I'm kind of just all in my head. I don't really want to talk to anybody. You can ask my husband, I'm probably not the nicest, maybe a little moody. But yeah, it's really hard to get out of my own way, even though I know what's going on.
The weight is a surprise, I think, that there's an actual physical weight. When they say it's hard to get out of bed, it's like, oh no, I mean, it's actually hard.
Yes, it's physically hard. And I, because I have kids, I don't really have an option. You get up and you go. If they were older, maybe I'd have a little bit of an option, I guess, but they're only 8 and 10. So I have to get up. So there's that. But I will get up, but I feel like I'm dragging myself. I feel like I have like cement bricks on my feet and sandbags on my arms and just pulling myself literally through the day.
I think that's what I'd like to focus on in this episode with you is the challenge of caring for yourself when you're the parent of young children. Can I say who also have diagnoses or should I not?
Yes. Yeah. My daughter, she's been diagnosed with OCD, but pretty sure there's still a little something going on there. Lots of anxiety. And then my son has DMDD, which is disruptive mood dysregulation disorder paired with ADHD. So there's a lot going on in my house all the time. Plus, I myself have depression and anxiety and ADHD. So I wonder where they get it from. But
That's an alphabet soup.
yeah, right. And I was just in therapy this morning, and I was talking to my therapist about how overwhelming, those diagnoses and the symptoms and all of that occur on a daily basis in our house, how overwhelming that can be. And she asked me, what do you do to take care of yourself?
Yeah.
And I kind of laughed, and I was like, I like to think that I take care of myself, but I think it's just nature as a mom that you get up and you take care of your kids, and they are number one.
Michelle has come to consider the hours after her children go to bed and she can have some alone time to be her taking care of herself time. But it also takes away from much needed sleep. So her therapist had a suggestion.
How about you just set a reminder on your phone, and that reminds you to take a couple minutes to do something for yourself, whether that's remind yourself that, like, hey, you're a good parent, you're trying your hardest, you're doing your best, or just to acknowledge that, yeah, this is really hard, but it's going to be okay. Just actually say these things to yourself, write them down, whatever it is, but set an alarm to remind yourself to do that. Because when you have so much activity and big emotions and stimulation and whatnot in the house all the time, when it gets quiet, you just kind of want to zone. And sometimes that's helpful, but sometimes it's really just counterproductive to taking care of yourself. So I said to her, I was like, that's such a baseline, simple thing to say. And I consider myself intelligent and I consider myself emotionally intelligent. But when you're in your own life and you're going through all the waves, sometimes the most simple things you just don't even think of until somebody literally says, hey, just take a minute to remind yourself that, you don't suck,
You don't suck either, in case you need to hear that today. Michelle's therapist also challenged her to talk to herself with the same compassion and understanding that she'd speak to a dear friend going through a similar experience.
I'm like, oh, that's easy. I know exactly what to tell them. I think they're great and they're trying and that's all that matters and blah, blah, blah. But then it comes down to like me saying that to myself. And I'm like, no, not for you. It's the weirdest thing.
Wow.
So I have to work on that. I really do.
We love it when people share really good tips or information that they get from a therapist because A, not all of us have access to a good therapist, and B, we know it actually worked for someone. So during her pregnancy, Michelle says she had really bad anxiety and really bad intrusive thoughts. This is what her therapist at the time suggested.
What if you just let whatever thought popped in your head just be there and then know that it's going to go away? So I tried it and I just kind of let these things wash over me. And I was like, all right, okay. I think it was the fight of trying to control how I was feeling or what was just kind of happening with my own anxiety, my own depression that made it worse. So I tell my daughter now, I'm like, if you're mad, cool. Just like let it roll. Just let it be what it is. Sit with it. It's not going to be fun, but you can do it. Like you can do the hard thing. I've learned that just through my therapy, travels, journeys, whatever you want to call it, with depression.
In addition to sitting with the thoughts, Michelle has found it really helpful to articulate them. Some people journal, others prefer to verbalize it.
During my pregnancies, when I was really feeling the depression, really feeling the anxiety, my husband would come home from work and we would set aside 10 minutes every day. And I would tell him all the crazy things that went into my head, any intrusive thoughts, any feelings about feeling depressed or feeling like I'm crazy. One minute I'm feeling okay. And then the next minute I'm just like down in the dumps. And I just spit it out for 10 minutes to him. And then afterwards I feel so much better because I was able to, it wasn't in me anymore. And it was out and somebody else heard it and didn't like run away. And so it helped a lot. So I want my kids to be able to have that opportunity too, because it was so helpful for me.
Depression sucks, and we're clear about that in this podcast. But it sounds like there are ways that the lessons you've learned from your depression have made you a more empathetic and even effective parent in some ways.
I think so. I think it's like a double-edged sword for me. I think being too empathetic can make it really hard to hold the line when you need to.
Mm-hmm.
I also think it's really important to be empathetic. Like, I don't ever want to forget what it felt like when I was a kid. I don't want to look at my kid and be like, I have no idea what is wrong with them. They are just crazy. No, because I've been that kid. I've been 10, I've been 8. I don't want to forget that. I feel like I'm going to lose my connection with them if I forget it.
What do you think is the biggest challenge of raising a family when you have depression and anxiety?
Cerebrally, I can understand that me being healthy and me taking care of myself physically, mentally, spiritually, whatever, is the best thing I can do for my kids. But when you have something like depression, it kind of tricks you into thinking like, okay, you know what, you're not important. Like, just let's put you on the back burner because all these other things have to be taken care of. And so I think that little voice is a big challenge for me, and to remind myself like, hey, I actually, I deserve a certain level of respect. I deserve to be able to say, I'm not going to do that with you right now because I need time to do X, Y, or Z for myself, and really like lean into that so that I can continue to make myself better for my kids. Because my kids, especially with the mental health struggles they experience, they need that. I think that it's important that they see their parents learn how to figure out these mental health issues as well. Because like we're all just kind of figuring it out no matter how old we are. But yeah, sometimes it's a lot to bear and try to model for them. Sometimes it's just not possible. And I myself, hey, you know what? That's not possible today. This is what you're getting, and I'm sorry. And be okay with that.
I think there's something really healthy about saying that and modeling that, because throughout life, with or without a mental health diagnosis, there's days we can and days we can't. Minutes we can and minutes we can't. And you just have to be able to say, yeah, not today.
Absolutely. And I have like that toxic productivity where even on those days where I feel like I'm being weighed down, I'm still in my head like, what are you going to accomplish? What are you going to do? Even though I feel like I really can't do much of anything. So that's a big challenge to kind of push through those things, because you have to just kind of accept that you can't do all the things, and that's okay.
A frozen pizza works some nights, right?
Frozen pizza works many nights.
Are you able to notice your early warning signs so you can say to yourself or your children, hey, I think it's coming, the way we would if our strep throat was coming or a flu?
Yeah, for sure. I can definitely I feel like my productivity starts to come down. I'm not as like fresh in my mind. A lot of times I have different ideas. I want to do this, or I'll have different lists for, trying to stay as organized as possible for the week. And when I start to see that like I become less organized or I become messy, you can ask my husband. It's probably the number one signal that I am depressed is that my closet is a mess. I live out of my laundry basket and I haven't put away my laundry, but everybody else is put away, And then honestly, I'll just start to kind of feel like a little bit of a slowdown, just emotionally, physically. At that point, I just know it's kind of coming. But what I don't know is how long it's going to last, and if it's going to be that serious or if it's going to be like just kind of minor. So I kind of just have to roll with that. But yeah, I do have those symptoms before that I notice.
And when you notice them, are there things that you know that help, that can make the slide down less or slower or something different? Can you affect it in any way?
I don't know. I really think I might have to think on that more. But what I do know is that when I am not feeling depressed and I'm feeling pretty good or even keel, I try to make sure that things are as in order as possible, because I know that I don't have the energy or the wherewithal when I get depressed or I begin getting depressed to really kind of like pull that through. And I know that I need that. So if I'm depressed, I need to be like, oh, thank God for like last week, Michelle. because she put all this stuff together. But my kids also need that, and things, when I get scattered, they get scattered. And that's not really helpful for anybody. I don't know if helpful is the right word, but because it is what it is. But I think just trying to be aware that does happen, that I do get depressed, at least once a month, if not more, trying to be preemptive in that. But also I do remind myself to not be so tough on myself. Do I believe that when I remind myself that? Not always, but I can try.
Michelle was diagnosed and medicated for ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, in second grade. But she was 26 before she was treated for depression, and that was almost by accident.
And it was kind of like, you definitely have anxiety. We know this. We're also going to give you this medication that can also treat depression, like an SSRI,
Right.
And I went on medication. I was like, whoa, that's a total difference. Just kind of started to dissect that down with the therapist. And I was like, yeah, no kidding. Look at that. Like, it's staring me in all this time. But yeah, I was dealing with that combo of depression and anxiety. But it was for a while rearing its head like anxiety, very much so. That's how I presented with those things, like these really just unrealistic fears and anxieties that I just think were fueled also by depression too. They always play off each other. And I still take medication for depression, but I still get depressed. And I think that's like a huge misconception, is that people are like, oh, well, you go to therapy and you have medication, so like you're good. It's like, no, you're not. Medication's only going to do so much. You have to do the other half of the work. And even when you do, it's still a really powerful thing. And it's hard to manage. And it doesn't just go away with a treatment plan.
Michelle says over the many years she has been dealing with and managing her depression, she has also learned to ask herself the question, what does my soul need? Hers, she says, needs to be outside whenever she can, and to be around horses. And when she feels depressed, Michelle says she asks herself, what is making me feel depressed? Can I identify it? Can I address it?
A perfect example would be like, well, my workspace is a mess, and it's just triggering me to feel like everything is, too heavy to bear. So I'm going to take 5 minutes and I'm going to do whatever I can. And when the 5 minutes is over, whatever is there, and maybe it'll make me feel better. Something simple like that. I learned that in a book that I think it's called Brain Lock. I have it here somewhere, but it's like when you're depressed or when you're anxious or anything's going on where you're getting in your own way, it's like your brain, it's like you have two gears and the gears are locked, and you almost have to go and do something really like normal-ish to unlock the gears, like go fold your laundry, like get your brain moving so you can kind of move past that. So there's always kinds of little things in the day that you want to try to look at that, if I'm feeling down, have I gone outside? Have I been down and work for several hours and haven't even looked at the time? Like, what do I need? Whatever it is. But I think checking in with yourself on a regular basis, and then like taking a big picture look at your life and asking, like, is this what I want with my life? And is this what's missing? Is there something missing? What can I do to have a more fulfilling life? And I think that helps.
Wow. Michelle is talking both about checking in with herself on a regular basis about what she needs in a given moment or a given minute or a given day, and also what she needs in her life. And are there elements that are promoting wellness or impeding her ability to stay well? Powerful.
Really powerful. I don't think I've ever said to myself, what's missing? What is it that I desire, and is it here? It seems like a basic question, but I don't think I've ever asked myself that.
I think it's one that not all of us give ourselves permission or have ever been invited to ask.
Well, consider ourselves invited.
Yeah. I just know so many people living in survival mode. So One point that we do want to make clear is that Michelle says that with young kids, she has to get up and get her done. We've also interviewed parents in the past who were simply unable to do that. And we don't mean to shame anyone. This is Michelle's unique story and experience.
When you mention Michelle's specific experience, part of that is her son and his diagnosis. And I don't like to mention things in these episodes without defining them. And DMDD is not something I was really familiar with. So I looked it up. Disruptive mood dysregulation disorder is a childhood condition characterized by a persistent pattern of severe irritability, frequent temper outbursts, and chronic anger that is out of proportion to the situation. It is more than just a bad temper. It is an extreme difficulty regulating emotions that significantly impacts daily life, and no doubt not just his own.
Absolutely. In the DSM-5, the only thing that qualifies for a diagnosis is if it gets in the way of your everyday life. Because some of the things like getting sad, feeling depressed, those are very common human experiences. Those are just part of the tapestry of being a human. Some of those words that you brought up around DMDD, irritability, temper outbursts, anger, those are totally appropriate for a lot of situations and in childhood when so much is happening to
100%.
You don't get all the choice that we get as adults. And also we have to be important that when we see a young person who's having a tantrum in the checkout, that we are not diagnosing them or attributing labels to folks, because a lot of these
or judging
things
their
are,
parents.
well, certainly that too.
Yeah.
And so when you see a kid who's struggling, it is very rare to offer compassion. That sort of pathologizing or just passing judgment on parents and children with big feelings is something that our society does a particularly crummy job at.
I also want to really thank Michelle for sharing her story, because as a parent with depression, there was a lot I related to, and it is hard. It's really hard. And there are times you're just like, I just can't, but I've got to. It's a lot. So she did a really good job of explaining it and offering, I love the tips from the therapists, because those are things my therapist hasn't said, and they were things that can definitely be applied in different situations.
Yes. I actually had the luxury of listening to Michelle's insights yesterday and thinking about them before today. And so I actually tried a few, because I'm actually having a hard week, a hard sort of 48 hours. And so some of the advice that she gave, I tried to apply. And so one of the things that she mentions is that it's really helpful to write down in advance or to think about what you might need. And so a tool I've offered to schools, but I'm going to start to do one for myself tonight, is to actually just make a grid on a piece of paper, and in the boxes, like a bingo card almost, write down some of the things that do support me when I'm having a hard time. And so some of those things that I plan to write down are a shower. I know that's not always possible for everyone, but it does help me shift my mood and my state of being. Shaking out my shoulders and humming are really, really helpful for me. So I took a walk earlier, and in a natural place where no one would stare as I made noises and shook my shoulders. And it did help a little bit. And so I really appreciate the intentionality that Michelle uses in her life. It's pretty inspiring about what she needs, because sometimes it's just not top of mind. You have all this other stuff going on. And the idea of going, how can I help myself in this moment, feels like an impossible question, because it's the 40th thought that went through your brain within that 60 seconds.
How can I feed my soul gets bumped down pretty far, when how the hell am I going to feed my family is way up there. So I hear what you're saying.
And as Michelle also names, there's this sense on the days that we can do less or maybe nothing at all, just a surviving day, that there is this mentality and this myth that if we are not producing, we're useless. And it is one of the things that gets in the way of us being able to be gentle with ourselves, because there's so many messages that we get of just keep going. Who are you? Other people have it worse. And I have a friend is a surgeon. And I was speaking to them the other day, and they said that they coach their residents in the hospital that pain is pain. And they said, your patient who just had a toe amputated is in pain. And you're not going to try to comfort that person by saying, well, it's better than the guy next to you who lost his whole lower leg. Pain is pain. That person's in pain. The toe person is pain, and the knee person is in pain. And we don't need to compare pain for it to be valid. That felt really clarifying to me. We often talk about how we treat mental health differently than we treat physical health. And I was sharing that I was having a hard time in a phone call with them last week. And they were like, why are you minimizing it? Pain is pain. I'm sorry you're in pain. Yes, other people are also in pain. But I'm sorry you are. And I needed to hear that. And I was reminded of it in listening to Michelle's insights.
That's the whole point of this podcast, We say you're not alone. It's like, yeah, I'm alone. I'm alone doing this. But there are other people having similar experiences, and we can all learn from each other. So very cool.
We really hope that this discussion helps give some language or context to your own depression, or ideas for how to support someone else in your life living with it. We invite you to check out the hundreds of episodes in our archive and to explore both the Resource Hub and treatment options on recovery.com. Depression is too dark a road to walk alone.
We'll be back next week.